When you wake up well-rested on a great mattress, everything becomes clear.
I do make everything about me.
Things you missed when you were tired finally reveal themselves.
My passport is in the pocket of the duffel bag I took to Mexico.
At Mattress Firm, we know the right mattress matters. We also know that price does too. So if you see a lower price somewhere else, we'll match it. Plus, you get free and fast delivery. Shop in-store or online at mattressfirm.com. The right mattress matters. We'll find yours. Restrictions apply. See store or website for details.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. You know, it's hard to believe that inflation is still a thing, but boy, it sure is. And that's exactly why Mint Mobile still gives you premium wireless for just $15 a month. Well, it's also because we have that offer printed on, like, 1 million T-shirts, but it's mostly the inflation thing. So give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months required. New subscribers only. Renew for 12 months to lock in savings. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See mintmobile.com.
Welcome, listeners, to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones with me, your podcast host, Tony Evans. This is an interesting one this week. I was out record shopping a couple of weeks ago, as I like to do, and I sort of just in my own time had a thought about the modern collector of vinyl, as we all are now, and what was on the shelves in front of me. And there was a dearth of or a plethora of coloured vinyls and picture discs. Now, I thought to myself, it wasn't that long ago when they were the difference, and now it's the black vinyl which is not the norm anymore. And I think that's, I was thinking about it. Why was that the case? Is it, as an audiophile like myself, I thought, what is the case? Why is that? And I think it's because we are the industry is trying to reinvigorate the vinyl industry because it's probably better sound, it's better product, it costs more, more money for your bang for your buck as a producer, and bands just want to have that original vinyl sound again. But to get people to part with their, here in Australia, the average brand new vinyl now is between $50 to $70. So to part with that money, we're trying to get the kids, and I'm doing that with air quotes, to buy stuff that excites them. And if it's either like funky packaging, like we mentioned a few weeks ago, artwork, is it like a splattered vinyl, a coloured vinyl, a shaped disc, a picture disc, and that's. You'll find now when you go to buy your records, very rarely will you just go and buy the black vinyl version of it. Now, there is some, there's some snobs out there in the, record collecting cognoscenti. Myself, not one of them anymore. Used to be that way years ago. That the fact that you thought, well, if it wasn't the black vinyl, the sound would be poor. That isn't the case anymore. The materials that they can use to make the vinyls, coloured or otherwise, are very much similar. The only difference I'm finding is some of the interesting pattern ones I do get when I clean them for the first time when they're brand new. I get some of that residue and dust that comes off. But that's, I think, in general, actually, the finishing of vinyl these days is a lot subpar compared to what it used to be. When you go and buy a record 30 years ago, or longer, the product that came to you from the record shop, because the records were stored separately to the covers, you go in and you take the cover to the counter and they go and get it out of a paper sleeve and put it in a paper sleeve and give it to you. They usually wiped it down, it was cleaned, it had been cleaned thoroughly. Whereas these days it feels like there's a lot of factory residue dust on vinyl, particularly coloured prints. You get a lot of unfinished edges around the edge where you get little bits of vinyl flake off, and that's more so with the coloured prints, I think. But anyway, that's why I think we are having such a huge lift in the novelty of the side of audio collecting. Now, that, I'm sure, as I said, does upset some die-in-the-wall record collectors. I personally love it because I've got thousands of black vinyl records. It's so nice that I can go and get, say Motorhead's latest album is going to come out live at Montreux. I can get it, yellow vinyl, blue vinyl, green vinyl. I can get it black vinyl. I can get it, In fact, often the black vinyl ones are the ones that are limited editions. I just got myself a copy of the new Savage Master album, They Hunt at Night, and I got the black vinyl one. There was only like 100 of them made. Now, I'm always a bit dubious when they say that there's only 100 of this made, or 20 of that made, or 30 of that made. Personally, but it is sort of, you have to take them for their word, don't you? But it does bring back the sense of fun buying records. I mean, that really the punk movement really sort of set fire to that coloured vinyl phenomena in the late 70s, for that sort of neon madness that was to gate crash the music scene then. But what we're going to talk about mainly here is picture discs. Now, this comes back to a conversation I had with John, my good friend John. We both went to Record Store Day, as we do, and we both bought our copies of ELP, or Emerson, Lake and Palmer's Brain Salad Surgery picture disc. Now, to say that the sound is poor on that disc is probably an understatement. Now, maybe it needs a good clean. As I said, there's a bit of surface noise, but it really didn't sound... It sounded muddy compared to the original print. And they also set me in mind to think about this conversation. I wrote it down in my notes to cover, and so we had that conversation, because we all know that we genuinely, most record collectors of a certain type, will buy picture discs not to play them. Now, that sounds contradictory to why you buy audio media, but let's be honest, I have, and I do, buy several copies of the same record. And I just, on the weekend, bought another copy of Peace of Mind, which I've now got like 6 copies of it. I'm not going to, because the Australian print, right? I'm not going to play that Australian print. I just want the fact it was made in Australia for the Australian market, and it makes it a collector's thing. So I might play it, I might not. But it's the same with the picture discs. Okay, I think that people get a little bit het up with the sound quality. I remember one of the earliest memories I had of picture discs was my brother bringing home the Star Wars soundtrack picture disc with the droids in the sand dunes, the cut-out cover. I remember being really impressed by that. Now, again, my brother was more of an audiophile than I ever would be, and I was. I think I don't know now, maybe he's not, who knows, but he was really much, really into his audiophilia, if that's the right word. And so he really didn't like the sound that he got from the picture disc, and he'd often say to me that it would damage the needle. That was his concern, that the quality of the vinyl was not there. And again, from memory, I don't remember it sounding bad, but I was only like 8 or 9 at the time. I do have some picture discs that sound absolutely amazing. I've got a particularly good live Venom picture disc, which sounds fantastic. I've got a few Marillion-shaped picture disc singles which sound fantastic. So, to my ears anyway, I think it just depends on how they're manufactured, what the pressing plant's like, and the weight of the vinyl as well. I mean, that's another thing now. Vinyl used to be really flimsy, like wobble board material. Now it's all 180 grams, 220 grams, all weighted material, because I think there's a sort of perceived perception that will make better sound, and it does make better sound because it deadens the vibration of the disc. But if you've got a poor turntable, like a horrible flea market thing, it makes no difference. If you've got a nice one like me, I've got a Riga Planner 3 with a nice thick 12mm thick glass platter, on a completely vibration-free platform. It's going to sound amazing, right? So it doesn't matter what you play it on as well. But where I'm coming from there is that, it all depends on your ear. If you go to play it and you think, well, I don't hear the difference, I'm not worried, then fine. It's like the same with CDs and cassettes and any medium that you play your music back on. If you enjoy the way it comes out of your speakers or into your ears, and you enjoy the way that you interact with the media, it doesn't really matter what media it is. It's just that of late, in the last probably 5 years or so, it really has all been coloured vinyl and novelty covers and novelty shapes, and to try and keep the record buyers coming back. When you go to a record store day, often you'll look and you'll see that most of the records that disappear off the shelves are the special edition, limited edition, coloured or shaped, or something. It's not genuinely the music within the package. Excuse me, hang on. It's usually the package itself, and that's fine. No need to feel ashamed about that. I think that we tend to, as snobby audiophiles, kick ourselves by going, oh, we shouldn't really enjoy having that particular picture disc. I've got, I said, in my collection, I tend to buy more picture discs than I ever used to, actually. I just recently bought, I picked up a couple of Sex Pistols picture discs, which I didn't have before. Again, will I play them? Probably not. Do I like the fact that I've got them? Yeah, I love the fact the art's there and accessible. And that's another thing about picture discs, is that sadly, a lot of the time with the picture disc, because the picture disc is what you buy it for, it comes in subpar packaging. Please, people out there listening, if there's anyone out there listening who's designing record covers, who's put them. It doesn't matter if the picture disc goes inside the sleeve and you take it out of a paper sleeve and there's your picture disc, or have it like a gatefold. It slips in. You've got to cut out. You can see, once you open the gatefold sleeve, you can see the picture disc. One of the most irritating modern phenomena is just in a PVC cover. No cardboard, no rigidity. It's just straight into this PVC cover, and there's no wonder that modern picture discs sound terrible. Taking them in and out of these new PVC covers you're gonna get surface scratches. I actually nerdily put mine into lined paper inner sleeves, and then put them back into the PVC cover, because I'm just sick of them getting damaged. If I want to show someone or look at it, I'll take it out, and that leads me on a different note, a really irksome and irritating note, to ill-fitting PVC plastic inner liners. Oh, it's the bane of my record collecting existence. That Maiden album I picked up, it had an oversized PVC plasticky cover inner sleeve that's meant to be scratch and anti-static, but when you try and put it in, because I like to put the vinyl into the inner sleeve, face the up side of the inner sleeve, the entrance to the inner sleeve, up and into the vinyl, so it gives you a double sealing, so you don't get dust in, right? But these, you couldn't even get the plastic into the record cover. It wouldn't even sit inside. It bulked, it flapped around. It was horrible. Anyway, so please, you can buy quite cheaply online some decent paper inner sleeves that have a lot that are lined with a sort of soft plastic, so that you don't scratch your vinyl taking your records in and out. All right. You just can, and I know that a lot of people like me will go and buy secondhand records. I love a good secondhand record hunt, and nothing irks me more than either the record being chucked straight into the cardboard sleeve, no inner sleeve, or that my brother used to say they were Japanese. I remember him used to say to me, "Oh, they were a Japanese invention," and I was like, "Well, if they are," so I just banged the microphone. If they are, then I don't want to know about it because they're just really horrendously horrible. I hate them. Hate them. Anyway, back to picture discs. So I thought I might start off with a little potted history of the picture disc. We'll start here, and then when we get to the second side, we'll go into the later period. But it says here, it's my research doing, that the actual... Now, I was surprised about this. I would have thought the picture disc was a 60s invention. But no, in fact, the earliest picture discs were made by a Canadian company, Berliner Grammophon Company, around 1900, for his master's voice. They were actually not a picture disc, it was a etched record. They'd etched in his master's voice into the vinyl before they pressed it. So it was basically like a copyright safe thing. So that was one of the very first early picture discs, picture of the dog and the gramophone, etched into the vinyl. But the actual proper first ever earliest records were not discs, but strictly speaking, but rectangular picture postcards with small round transparent celluloid records glued onto the illustrated side. Such as cards were used in about 1909, they were originally. So 9 years after the very first ever etched disc. Later, the records were pressed into transparent coatings and covered the entire picture side of the card. This novelty product idea proved to have a very long life in the 1950s and throughout the rest of the vinyl era. So, very interesting. I do remember that seeing a documentary about the Russians, because in Russia they couldn't have pop music. It was not allowed. So to get music, what they would do is they would get X-ray sheets. So from hospitals, old X-ray sheets, what leftover pictures of people's chests and arms and legs, cut them into circles and print vinyl onto them, print records onto them. And so they'd have a record to play, and it was actually, if you can still buy them online, you can still buy them on eBay. And then it's X-ray prints with a record. It was usually pop music of the 60s and 70s or classical music, but mainly pop, because that's what they were trying to get into the country. Really fancy. That's what I call going above and beyond. Now, a lot of these records were actually released on the back of boxes of breakfast cereal, and it was usually to sell advertising space. So the record you'd unpop the record out, and it'd sell you, brand X soap, or and it was usually some sort of modern, at that particular time, a pop band would be selling themselves to Kellogg's, and it became very collectible. The first picture disc of substantial size sold as records meant only to be looked at and not played. So interesting again, back to that whole collecting picture discs to be looked at and not played. Fascinating, I think. And that began in the 1930s. With several countries, when several companies in several countries began issuing them. Some were illustrated with photographs or artwork simply designed to appropriate the musical content, but also some were to advertise, as we mentioned before. Rattle, rattle, paper, crunch, crunch, crunch. These are my notes. I'm going back to notes this week. The computer thing just gave me the shits last week. 1 second. So I'm drinking some tea. But interestingly, and this is another bit I really found fascinating, was that some of the very earliest picture discs were actually made for... Now, this did shock me. Adolf Hitler had his own paper picture disc. And even the British fascist Oswald Mosley, the brown shirts, even he had a picture disc. Now, most of these records were made of simple sheet of fairly thin printed cardboard with a very thin plastic coating, and their audio quality was substandard. As this is where I think the myth of picture disc sounds being poor coming from. Some were more sturdy and well made, and they equaled or actually surpassed the audio quality of ordinary records. Again, as I say, I think I've heard that. I've had friends of mine that reckon that certain picture discs actually sound better. There's that fallacy that they wear out quicker. That's not the truth. They were made of a gritty shellac compound that introduced a lot of background noise. And this is why, again, the picture disc sort of was a bit much maligned. And in 1933, RCA Victor in the US issued a few typically cardboard-based picture disc that was unhappy with their quality and soon began making an improved type. A rigid black shellac core was sandwiched between two illustrated sheets. Each side was then topped with a substantial layer of high-quality clear illustrated plastic into which the recording was pressed. So there we go. That's how the very early picture discs that came about up until about 1946. These were produced on 78s and very occasionally produced on the 33 and a third RPM. The 78, of course, was a much heavier needle and a much heavier arm, and that would have destroyed early copies of these picture discs, like the ones that Hitler and Oswald Mosley don't really exist that much. There's a few in museums, but they sort of got destroyed pretty quickly because of the way they were made. It was the first 33 RPM picture disc and only one made until I made notes and I read that wrong. Blah 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 blah. That's so me, isn't it? What have I got here? Okay, Victor introduced the earliest real picture disc that played at 33 RPM, and they were mainly made of high quality and very special. They were only released in small quantities, and they were sold at a much higher price than ordinary records. Well, as you can imagine, they sold in very small numbers. Compared to the industry around in the 1930s. Right. Unfortunately, there was a crash, of course, during the war. An introduction of radio, which killed the record industry. So not just the war, but the record industry radio killed the record industry. And picture discs were one of the first to go. So that's why there's a big gap between sort of 30s and the 50s and the 60s, because it was just cheaper to keep making black vinyl pressed acetate records than many layered picture discs. Anyway, that's enough for this side. I'm going to go and warm up my tea, and then I'll come back and we'll go on from the 1940s onwards in the history of our picture discs and what ones we love and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed side one, and I'm sure you've got records out there that you love that are picture discs that you go, well, I don't really care that they're picture discs, I like them, it's good enough for me. Anyway, talk to you on the other side. Bye guys.
When you wake up well-rested on a great mattress, everything becomes clear.
I do make everything about me.
Things you missed when you were tired finally reveal themselves.
My passport is in the pocket of the duffel bag I took to Mexico.
At Mattress Firm, we know the right mattress matters. We also know that price does too. So if you see a lower price somewhere else, we'll match it. Plus, you get free and fast delivery. Shop in-store or online at mattressfirm.com. The right mattress matters. We'll find yours. Restrictions apply. See store or website for details.
Every year, one thing is always predictable. Postage costs go up. Stamps.com gives you crazy discounts of up to 89% off USPS and UPS services, so your business will barely notice the change. Stamps.com has been indispensable for over 1 million businesses just like yours. It's like your own personal post office. No lines, no traffic, no waiting. Sign up with promo code PROGRAM for a 4-week trial plus free postage and a free digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts. That's Stamps.com, code PROGRAM.
Welcome back to the potted history of picture discs. I always say that quickly when you've had a few drinks, eh? A bit too many plosives there, I think. 1 second, and more tea, I think. So, with the Great Depression and World War II no longer around from 1946 onwards, to interfere with such modest luxuries, the picture disc can re-emerge in 1946 when Tom Safdie's Savway Industries began issuing Vogue records. Vogues were a well-made product, physically smaller to RCA Victor's improved 1933 issues, except their core discs were aluminium instead of shellac. So instead of having cardboard, shellac, clear, it's now a metal disc in the middle. give it more aluminium instead of shellac. The Victor disc had been illustrated in high Art Deco styles, often in sober but elegant black and white images. I think that sounds beautiful, doesn't it? I would want to see one of those. I've not actually seen one in real life, but I'm sure they're wonderful to hold. They had pin-up art, mostly gaudy coloured as well, which would be fantastic. Some dramatic, some humorous, some very cartoonish. The audio quality was excellent by contemporary standards, and they were featured professional talent, most with names known to the general public. But Vogue was handicapped by the lack of any big hit names. Top-tier talent was usually under exclusive contract to companies such as Mercury Records, for whom Savoy manufactured special attention-grabbing, quiet surface picture discs. There you go, quiet surface, so no noise involved, right? That was their selling point. And the Vogue records retailed at around about $1.05, about 50% more than your ordinary 10-inch 78 records. So you can see why it would be only for those sort of real other collectors at the time, or the rich and well-heeled, or really nice special birthday presents and stuff like that. Vogue went out of business in 1947 after fewer than 100 catalogue items bearing the Vogue logo had been issued. What a shame, really. It's a real shame, really. But then other companies, more commercially successful and long-lived, were some of the children's picture discs. Now, I actually have a couple of pre-war children's picture discs I picked up in a second-hand store. I got them because of as a record collector. Not the music, not the image, nothing inside, but it was just something that sort of tickled my fancy. They were marketed by Record Guild of America. Yes, they are. Mine's yellow, I believe, and red. From the 1940s to the 50s, their most popular and well-known issues resembled Vogue records in their general style of illustrations and use of high-quality materials, but they were only 7 inches in diameter, had no reinforcing core discs, and sold much lower price. Other companies such as Voca also made pictures for children, but I've got the Record Guild of America ones. Okay, and of course then you have Red Raven movie records, introduced in 1956, were a very unusual type of children's picture disc that features a sequence of 16 interwoven animated frames arrayed around the centre, where they're played at 70 RPM. On the turntable, the small 16 mirrored images danced on the disc. Now I think that's amazing. Again, I've never seen that. I've seen something similar recently, and there are those new, again, part of the new wave of fancy records. You get holographic records that when they play, you get a holographic image. You've got sparkle, all sorts of strange stuff. But it was really nice because it was an endlessly repeating high-quality animated cartoon scene appropriate to the song. So how fantastic is that? These people, this is back in the 50s. What were people, it was just, people were still thinking about trying to sell their medium to different audiences. Pardon me. And, the kids market, grab them young, keep them forever, as they say, right? Pictures of the large and solid Victor Vogue type were very rarely issued in the US between the demise of Vogue in 1947 and the end of the 1960s. Interesting. But several lines of picture discs, such as the French Saturnes, were produced in Europe and Japan during these years. So they were still being made. I think it's just getting down to cost, right? Just down to cost. But here you go, right? Now the 70s, this is my era, right? This is where I think they really came into their own, A new generation of picture discs appeared in the 1970s. The first series picture discs with acceptable but still inferior sound quality were developed by Metronome Records, GmbH, a subsidiary of Elektra Records. These new picture discs were made by creating a 5-layer lamination consisting of core of black vinyl with a kiln-dried paper decals on either side and then outer skins of clear vinyl film, manufactured by 3M. On the outsides, in manufacture, one layer of the clear vinyl was first placed on the bed of the press. On top of that stamper, then a puck of hot black vinyl, then extruded was placed onto that. Finally, the top print and vinyl film layer was added, held by a retracting pin in the upper profile, usually employed to retain the upper paper label and press closed. Problems with the poor vinyl flow caused by the paper texture and the air release from the paper that, if not dried correctly, plagued the process. Now, I read that really quickly, and I'll read it again because I think I wrote it down and I can't read my bloody handwriting. I'll read it again quickly. But with a bit slower. In manufacture, one layer of the clear film was placed on the bed of the press on the top of the stamper. Then a puck of hot black vinyl from the extruder was placed on top of that. Finally, the top print and vinyl film layer was added, held by a retaining pin in the upper profile, usually employed to retain the upper paper label. And then the press closed. Problems with the poor vinyl flow caused the paper texture and the air released from the paper that had not been removed in the kiln drying process plagued the process. So it's quite a complicated process making early picture discs, isn't it? Sounds like it as well. The first modern rock picture disc was introduced as an assortment of artists such as the MC5, The Doors. It was released in 1969 by Metronome of Germany, entitled Psychedelic Underground and Off to Hallucinations. The second release was the British progressive rock band Curved Air's first album, Air Conditioning. That's an interesting one. When you play that one, it spirals as a visual visual thing on it. So as it spins, you get sort of like so I'm hitting the microphone. You get like a pattern that repeats on the surface. I'm not giving it a good description of it, but I'm sure if you Google it, you'll see it. One commercially issued American Curved Air's first album, so Air Conditioning, a UK issue, 1971. Commercially issued American picture disc is to the Elvis Love Still Burning, a collection of 11 Elvis Presley tribute songs by various artists. That was released in 1978. Initially, picture discs were usually promotional items pressed in small quantities, but the late 1970s then began to produce commercial products. Punk brought that in. Okay, punk really did, and pop. So instead of being just, hey, I'm going to make 5 or 6 thousand of this one single release it, they made large batches of them because cassettes and compact discs were coming in. Well, cassette was already in, but because compact disc was coming in, they wanted to try and keep that novelty and that record buyer in the market. As I said, going back to the picture disc, Curved Air is an optical illusion, is what I was trying to say. So as it rotates on its B side, while you get this optical spinning disc. Shaped discs were very common in the 80s, mostly considered to be collector's items rather than for listening. I have to agree there, when I wrote that down, that I've got lots of shaped picture discs that I personally don't play because they just... If you have an automatic record deck, not that I don't have an automatic record deck, but if you have an automatic record deck and you go press play and it comes up, now it's looking for the edge. I've had issues in the past. Years ago, I used to have a top a Bang & Olufsen record deck that was the arm was in the lid, and it was revert. It had an arm underneath, an arm above, so you could sort of almost like auto reverse. You play the A side and then the B side without having to turn the record over. Really fancy. And it had a laser to find the edge of the record, but if it was a shaped disc, it was never going to find that edge, you know. So I never used to bother playing them on fancy Bang & Olufsen because why would I bother? So then when you're sort of you're going through your poverty stage in life, you're an art student like I was, or whatever, you just moved out from home and you want to buy a record, you're going to buy one you're going to play. So you're not going to buy one that you can't really play it. So generally, they were always a little bit of a novelty in the 80s to me. But I've still got lots of them. A lot of interview discs are printed as picture discs. I've got Sex Pistols, Marillion. I've got Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple. I've got a Led Zeppelin one. I've got quite a few interview discs. I've got a Gary Moore one somewhere as well, because it was just a way of when you putting the record on, listening to the interview, you could see the picture of the person who'd been interviewed, I suppose. That's really it. That's the potted history of picture discs, isn't it, guys? Right? So, very sort of interesting that we sort of come from the 1900, where you would never imagine it to be, right through to the many layered, paper, shellac, in between paper and shellac and clear, the metal as a core. I have to tell you that I didn't know, until I was researching this, I didn't know that picture discs had a shellac core. I generally didn't. I thought it was clear, then the picture, then clear. And the modern ones do have that, but the older ones, and I've got a lot of 70s picture discs, I didn't realise that the core would be traditional black pressed shellac. Or extruded polyvinyl is what it actually is now, or it was back from the 70s onwards, even probably before then. And I just found that fascinating. That's something I'd learned, and I do love, as I said, the packaging aside, and I do have some fantastic. I've got a really my treasured possessions. I've got a Motorhead triple single picture disc set. It's 3 singles, 3 picture discs, all in a nice sort of flip out cover. They've all got a lovely PVC cut out, so you can see the vinyl, and it's nice and held in this case. The same with, I've got a Ghost, one of the first album eponymous. I don't play Ghost anymore, but that's a whole different podcast, right? But I really love that picture disc because it was bought for me by my kids for Christmas for me years ago, when I used to love Ghost, right? Before they became a pop band. There's alienating some of my audience. But if I can't say it on my show, when can I say it? Anyway, so we're going to go to the next section of this program. Is going to be, where do we go next? What's the next novelty, do you think, coming out of the... where can we go? We've got records that play hologram images when you turn them on the deck. You've got picture discs. You've got shaped picture discs. You've got coloured vinyls in all sorts of, wonderful, wacky colours. Again, side note, please, if you're buying a brand new coloured vinyl that's, say, a splattered vinyl, for instance, or a multicoloured vinyl, this happened to me recently when I was playing Behemoth's latest album, which is on a sort of gold and black splatter with white background. I actually, when I wiped the record down before I put it on the deck, I got a lot of gold fleck paint or gold fleck vinyl dust, and it got onto my needle, and it really bugged me because you pay very, very big money for quality stylus. You don't want it being ruined by that kind of thing. And that's, so just be mindful when you buy coloured vinyl to give them a really good clean verse first before you play them. And that goes for any record really, but more so for the coloured vinyls. But then again, so I sidetracked. Where do we go? What's next? What have we got in the... I mean, there are endless loop records. There are records that when you play them and you put your needle on one side of the record, on one part of the record, it plays a different track to when you play it on the other, when you paste the needle down again, so you get double tracking vinyl. You've got the... there was a German company released ultra length vinyl, so they could get the groove was even more microed, and so you got an hour on the record instead of 40 minutes. Incredibly tightly packed groove, but according to the YouTube channels I've watched, because I've never played one, the sound quality was great. So that there's that, isn't there? There's those kind of novelties. There's the packaging novel. I mean, the packaging for vinyl is now, as we mentioned a few weeks ago, is sort of endless, but not so much with the picture disc. Poor old picture disc gets chucked in a polyvinyl sleeve with a sticker that says, limited edition, Prince vinyl, coloured vinyl, or picture disc, and you get it home, and having to store that in your record collection is quite tricky. As I said, I now take mine out and put it into a nice protective audio quality, file quality picture paper sleeve, and it goes back in and goes into my collection, because yes, I know it's only a novelty, but I also want the fact that I can play it if I want to do so, and in the future if I want to sell it or move it, give it away, or whatever I want to do with my product with it. I don't want it to be lessened in its value, because again, they are, record collecting now has become quite valuable as a commodity, as an investment. So these picture discs, where a few years ago they were looked and frowned upon by audiophiles about the quality of the sound They damage the record. I mean, that was one of my favourite fallacies about a picture disc is, they're going to wear out quicker. Why? Why would they wear out quicker? It's same material on the top as a normal record. If anything, because they're layered, it's probably going to last a bit longer. It's a slightly thicker disc, I will always buy the picture disc version of anything that comes out if it's available, because I want to have it in all forms of the record. I had a friend, Melvin, in the UK, not normal Melvin, Crazy Melvin, good old Crazy Melvin. I shouldn't say Crazy Melvin, that's very politically incorrect. I called him Crazy Melvin because he was just wacky and wild, and I use crazy in the term as wacky and wild, not crazy as in, Cloud Cuckoo land. And he would have copies, I remember he had Road to Ruin by the Ramones, and I'd go to his house and he had 9 copies of it. He had every single colour vinyl pressing. He had UK pressing, US pressing. He had the picture disc. He had a signed acetate. He would go and buy 3 copies of the same record. He was a big Police fan, and he'd go and buy the same copies of the same 3 copies of the same record, put 2 into storage for protection and 1 to play. Now, not all of us are on the same level as Melvin, but there's a little bit of us in all of us that wants our expensive records that we buy. And let's be honest, if it's $70 to $80, $100, I went and bought 2. On average, I will spend about $200 to $250 when I go out to buy records. That's Australian dollars, by the way. Because, I just bought 2, as I mentioned on the weekend, Maiden Australian prints, and they come close to $200, and they're second hand, but I'm not going to get them easily, and I'm not going to let them go into the hands of another collector, because I would be like, where's my copies? And it is an investment, and so we do want to look after them. And so that's same with the picture discs. You've invested in them, you want to play them, you want to love them. You can put them in frames, you can put them in stands, you can do what you want with them. A lot of people do put one of them. Please never do this. If I ever see a picture disc with a clock mechanism in it, I'm gonna scream. The amount of times you go around Camden Market in London or wherever market you are, and there's someone out there that's gone and bought all these cheap picture discs. Some of them not even cheap, some of them bloody rare, and put clock movements in. I've almost, at one point, there was an Iron Maiden one, a shaped one, and it was for the Trooper. I almost bought the bloody thing just so I could take the mechanism out and have the record, unplayable that it might be. It just made me seethe with annoyance. So I don't want to see that. If you want to do that yourself, fine. Right, do it in your pleasure, private your own home. Don't show me or anyone else, because it only just us record collectors. It just irks us. And people ask me which. I've been asked, which genre has the most picture discs, and that's an interesting question, right? And I would honestly have to tell you that I think it would be pop and punk. Pop punk definitely. I'd love to think heavy metal had lots of picture discs, and it would have its equal amounts. But most metal heads of the early years weren't buying picture discs. They were buying just the right vinyl to put it on, play loud, play fast. I think you'll find that the audience was slightly older, and picture discs were aimed mainly at the beginning, I suppose, and towards the end of its big era. 70s to mid 80s, early 90s, it would have been the youth, the teenagers, the youth, right? So I think if you're looking to buy and invest in picture discs, and you're not buying to listen, but buying just as investment, and that's fine, you're probably best off looking at new wave punk and electro early 80s stuff, like your Duran Durans, your Spandau Ballets, and then there would be a lot of those made, but mainly actually where the money lies, and I'm not saying you buy music for investment, but it is, people do, are the bootleg picture discs, because their artwork that is not condoned by the band. It's usually music live concerts, poorly recorded, but who cares? It's a snapshot, it's a rarity, and that can often be quite a fun way of getting your picture disc collection up. Is looking for the sort of odd, sort of said, the bootleg options, because there's a lot of them around. I mean, Marillion, for instance, at one point was the most bootleg band in the world. Would you believe it? You would have thought it'd be like the Beatles, but no, they were at one point. Not so much now, obviously, but back in the mid 80s, 82 to 84, they had the most bootlegs of any other band, and that just blows your mind as well, doesn't it, to think about it? But I've got quite a few of those, actually. She says, sort of, mainly coloured vinyl. Didn't get a lot of picture discs from Marillion's bootlegs. Mainly coloured vinyl, a lot of splattered white, pink, and red, and yellow, and that kind of stuff. Anyway, that's me for this week. I hope you enjoyed the chat about picture discs, the quickly potted history of the medium. I sort of got those notes scrambled together. On paper, analog, much better than me flicking between screens and getting lost in my own mind. So last week I just like, oh my god, I completely lost track of what I was saying, and it just, I'm much more an analog kind of guy anyway. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I'm going to have some of my tea. One moment. I'm recording this late at night, actually, not in the morning like I normally do, because when I normally record on a Monday, I had a shocker of a migraine, so that curtailed the recording. This is much more pleasant. I quite enjoy it at night time, actually. It's quiet and peaceful, and your brain can sort of stretch a little bit more. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Get your record collection out. Please do send me some images of your picture disc collection. I'd love to see it. You know where to come. It's at Heavy Metal Tones Facebook page. I'll put the link below. Come and email me at heavymetaltones@gmail.com. That's heavymetaltones@gmail.com. Do go on and like and subscribe, and go and give me a review. I'd love a review. Give me some stars, 1 or 5. I don't really mind. Preferably 5, of course. Don't stress me out by giving me too many ones. Anyway, that's me rambling on. Me finished for the day. Chat you next week. Bye, guys.
When you wake up well-rested on a great mattress, everything becomes clear.
I do make everything about me.
Things you missed when you were tired finally reveal themselves.
My passport is in the pocket of the duffel bag I took to Mexico.
At Mattress Firm, we know the right mattress matters. We also know that price does too. So if you see a lower price somewhere else, we'll match it. Plus, you get free and fast delivery. Shop in-store or online at mattressfirm.com. The right mattress matters. We'll find yours. Restrictions apply. See store or website for details.
Every year, one thing is always predictable. Postage costs go up. Stamps.com gives you crazy discounts of up to 89% off USPS and UPS services, so your business will barely notice the change. Stamps.com has been indispensable for over 1 million businesses just like yours. It's like your own personal post office. No lines, no traffic, no waiting. Sign up with promo code PROGRAM for a 4-week trial plus free postage and a free digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts. That's Stamps.com, code PROGRAM.